Hi, everyone. Welcome back to Learn with me. I'm Deborah Hanson, and today we're going to be talking about Unit 1 AP Human Geography, and we're going to be looking at specifically the key terms for 1.2. So if you find the content helpful, please hit that like and subscribe button for me. Or if you have any questions, leave them in the comments below. I do all the APs. We started with AP Psychology, now we're adding AP Human Geo, and then we're going to do AP World as well, and then just continue to add more APs to make it easier for you to prepare for the AP exam. So let's get started. So on the slide, you're going to see all the key terms that are specifically important for 1.2 geographic data. It's really important to understand your key terms, not only to be able to define them, but also to know examples and how to apply them to your FRQs on test day. I always say the key to the 5 is knowing your key terms. It's super important, especially in AP Human Geo. So we're going to go through each of these words, definition, example, and I'll give you a little exam tip to go with it. So that's only going to be the key terms. If you want to know all the essential knowledge that goes with the 1.2 CD question, that's on a separate video, and I go into a lot more detail about these key terms and how they apply in AP Human Geo. So hopefully you find it helpful, and like I said, hit that subscribe button. Thanks. So let's start off with the key term that the whole section is actually named after, geographic data. So what is that? This geographic data is information about people, places, and the environment, and it helps geographers study patterns and relationships on Earth. Here's an example, a map showing where cities, farms, and rivers are located. So here's an exam tip for you. Remember, geographic data can be numbers, quantitative, or descriptions, qualitative. Oops. Now we're going to go to geospatial data. So this is data that is connected to a specific location on Earth, often collected with technology like GPS, GIS, or satellites. For example, satellite images showing how forests in the Amazon are shrinking over time. So here's an exam tip. If the question mentions data and location, it's not geospatial. If it's just numbers without location, it's not. Terrain features. These are natural parts of the Earth's surface, such as mountains, valleys, rivers, and lakes, that affect human settlement and activities. For example, the Himalayas act as a barrier between India and China, influencing travel, climate, and culture. So for example, for the exam tip, terrain affects population distribution and land use. Mountains equals low population, fertile valleys equals high population. Land use patterns. These are the ways that people organize and use land for homes, work, farming, or recreation. These patterns show how humans interact with the environment. For example, in many US cities, downtown is commercial while suburbs are residential. Here's an exam tip. Look for zoning patterns, residential, commercial, agriculture in FRQs about urban geography. Agricultural land. This is land used for growing crops or raising animals, often shaped by soil, climate, and water availability. For example, rice paddies in Southeast Asia or wheat farms in Kansas. Here's an exam tip. Agricultural land is influenced by climate. Don't confuse it with natural land that's untouched by humans. Residential land. Land set aside for housing, including apartments, neighborhoods, and suburbs. For examples, suburban areas outside of Los Angeles where families live and commute into the city. Here's an exam tip. High density residential equals apartments in cities. Low density equals suburban homes. Commercial land. This is land used for trade and business, such as shops, offices, and markets. Downtown Chicago, with its office buildings, shops, and restaurants, would be an example. Exam tip. On maps, commercial areas are often central due to accessibility, the CBD, the Central Business District. And that becomes a key term a little bit later on as well. Population statistics. These are numerical data about populations like size, density, age, or growth used to study trends. So for example, the US Census Bureau data showing the growth in Texas due to migration. Here's an exam tip. You need to know how to use population statistics in population pyramids, which are going to come a bit later, and growth rate questions. Total population. This is the total number of people living in a defined area. For example, a country, city, or a region. For example, Canada's total population is approximately 39 million people. Here's an exam tip. Total population alone doesn't show density. Watch for questions asking for distribution instead. Population density. The definition is the number of people living in a certain space, like per square mile or kilometer. For example, Tokyo, Japan has a population density of over 6,000 people per square kilometer, while rural Australia has fewer than 3 people per square kilometer. Here's an exam tip. You need to know the 3 types of population density: arithmetic, physiological, and agricultural. And these are going to be discussed a little bit later in Unit 1, so not in this particular slideshow, but later on. Birth rate. The definition is the number of live births per 1,000 people in a year. It shows population growth potential. For example, Niger has one of the world's highest birth rates, while Japan has one of the lowest. Here's an exam tip. High birth rate does not equal high population growth rate. Migration and death rates also matter. Death rate. The definition is the number of deaths per 1,000 people in a year affected by healthcare, nutrition, and living conditions. For example, Afghanistan has a higher death rate compared to the US due to limited healthcare. Here's an exam tip. Death rate can be high in both poor countries because of disease and wealthy countries because of older populations. Age structure. The breakdown of a population into age groups often shown in a population pyramid. For example, India's age structure shows a large young population, while Japan's shows many elderly people. We do go a lot more into population. I believe it's in Unit 2, so it will go into a lot more detail, but you just need to know the basics right now. Exam tip: wide base equals high birth rate, narrow base equals low birth rate. Life expectancy. The definition is the average number of years a person is expected to live based on health, environment, and wealth. For example, Japan has one of the world's highest life expectancies, around 84 years old, while Chad has one of the lowest, around 54 years old. So here's an exam tip. High life expectancy usually means better healthcare, education, and living conditions. Geographic Information System, the GIS. Definition: a computer-based tool that combines maps with data like population, roads, or land use to find patterns and relationships. For example, a city uses GIS to map where to build new schools based on population density and traffic routes. The exam tip: if a question asks about layering geographic data or combining multiple types of information on a map, it's GIS. GPS, the Global Positioning System. Definition is a satellite-based system that gives exact location using latitude, longitude, and sometimes elevation. For example, Google Maps uses GPS to give real-time driving directions. Exam tip: GPS tells you where you are, GIS tells you what's there and why. Don't mix them up on the exam. Remote sensing. The definition is collecting information about the Earth's surface from far away, usually using satellites or aircraft. For example, using satellite images to monitor ice melting in the Arctic. Exam tip: if the question mentions satellite images or measuring changes over time without being on the ground, it's remote sensing. So those are the key terms you need to know for 1.2 geographic data. So if you want to know more information about these and how they actually apply and link to the CED question for 1.2, that's on a separate video with lots of information to help you, study for the exam or a unit test, anything you need. If you found this helpful, please hit that like button. And if you want to hear more of our videos on AP, please hit the subscribe button and you'll get notifications when they come up. Thanks a lot for listening. See you next time.